Meg Peterson is the founder and CEO of On Deck Leadership and has led revenue teams at some amazing companies. It's hers and our belief that the frontline manager is the most influential person in a sales org, not the VP, not the director, the frontline manager. They have the most direct reports out of anybody, and those reports are the ones directly responsible for generating revenue. So their influence is vast. They're also the most overworked and under-resourced person in a sales hierarchy. Meg talks about the ROI of investing in your frontline leaders coming up next on Coach's Corner. Meg, super pumped to have you. How's it going today?
Oh, it's going great. So happy to be here.
Yeah, Meg, to give a little background, a lot of what On Deck Leadership does aligns with the theme of the conference, what Ambition helps with. So really excited to have her. But I'm not going to introduce her. Who better to do it than herself? So Meg, tell us a little bit about your background and then kind of what you're doing today that started On Deck Leadership.
Yeah. I have been in sales and operations for about 15 years. So really went into my career out of college working for Nestle in a sales leadership development program that had a lot of support around it, but was very execution focused. So how are you going to be the best leader for your division or for your team? Less about how are you going to be a good leader long term. And that I learned was kind of a consistent theme throughout my career is as leaders, we talk a lot about outputs, but not inputs. So over the next 15 years, I worked for a variety of companies, went to startup land, went back and forth between big companies, small companies, companies planning for events, acquisitions, things like that. Have done everything from CPG to tech to sports tech, ed tech to sold AI, the whole 9 yards. And have also been a customer of Ambition, brought Ambition into 2 organizations as part of our tech stack. I could talk about good tech stack practices all day, but really built On Deck with the logic of how can I provide better foundational leadership skills and be the support that I wish I had when I was 23, 24, 25, 38, yesterday, whatever it was like, how can I provide that experience and better set new leaders up for success? On Deck does a variety of different services, but our primary is teaching frontline leaders, first-time leaders up to first-time directors, those core foundational skills, and also providing one-on-one coaching. So as they navigate their career and both do upward and downward engagement, they're set up for success.
Yeah, I think something that I'm personally really excited to kind of learn more about some of the stuff we're going to share today is because of your perspective. I think like having the diversity of working for massive companies like Nestle all the way to small Series A's and startup land, like I really think perspective and even across industry too really just gives you different pieces of the puzzle that you don't see if you kind of stay in one lane. So I'm really really excited to hear your point of view on today's topic, which is the ROI of investing in frontline leaders. This is, as you've heard, something near and dear to both Meg and us over here at Ambition. Meg and I were talking before via email, and she sent over a couple of stats that really stick out to me. 49% of employees are looking for organizations that support continued development. And 70% of frontline leaders want to improve their leadership skills. So like often when we think about development, we think about leveling up a rep or someone getting promoted. And very rarely does like leadership principles and leadership skills come into the forefront. So let's dive in. Meg, why do you think there's a disconnect between the desire of frontline leaders to improve their leadership skills and the level of support that they actually receive from their organizations?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. One, we have seen this really big progression around still promoting the person who was best as an ICP. There's 2 major drawbacks to that. One, that person may not actually have leadership skills and traits. They have not proven that they are a good leader at that point in time. And you're also removing potentially your main revenue person and someone who's actually performing as an ICP and driving performance. But companies aren't matching that with, hey, I understand that you have never managed people before. You have never provided feedback in that way. We're going to invest in you. We're going to put you through a new management course. We're going to give you these resources. That's not happening. It's also, I mean, sometimes it's not even, they're not even getting a mentor. They're not even having like the one-on-one person that they can go talk to and say, I've never experienced this before. This person cried in a one-on-one. I didn't know what to do. You know, like we're skipping such a foundational step. And I think that's happening because look at the just the momentum around how people are investing. I think even all the way up to like PEs and VCs, like today, C-suites are expected to perform at such a like crazy fast level. That trickles down. So by the time a new manager is put into role, we're already talking about goal planning. We're talking about execution. We're talking about how can you lead your team to hit this pipeline target or this revenue target? And you're like skipping a step, which is we want you to hit this pipeline target. And here's how you're going to manage your team to get there. And like the why, the how, the what happens when it doesn't work, we're just like skipping it because we're so focused on the end goal.
It's definitely something like, you know, our audience is primarily sales leaders, and probably everybody that's listened was a first-time manager at some point in their career. They kind of had to be. And I think it's like interesting because I feel like sales is one of those disciplines or you know, where like that's the norm. You're the top rep, you produce month over month, year over year, you earn your stripes to take over a leadership role. And just because you're a great seller does not mean you're going to be a great leader. And if there's no enablement in place to help you become a good leader, like you said, man, it can be tough. It can be tough. And I think it's a good lead into the second question. You know, one thing we say over here are, your frontline managers are your force multipliers, right? Because they have, you know, these tentacles that come out and are touching more people in your revenue driving organization than anyone else, right? They're going to have sometimes you'll hear crazy numbers, 6 to 15 reps. And the amount of influence they have on that number is crazy. How can investing in the development of frontline leaders impact overall performance? Like what are some of your thoughts there?
Yeah, I like to teach that good leaders are kind of built like a tree. So your foundational skills, your inputs. So are you empathetic? Are you ethical? Are you efficient? Are you effective? Are you equitable? Like all those things, those are your roots. Those are who you are as your true authentic self. And then you learn through experience, and that's your trunk. And your trunk is only as stable as those roots are grounded. And so sometimes your trunk leans because you didn't have that like core grounding. And then you start sprouting branches and you start sprouting leaves. And those are your outputs. Those are your goal metrics. Those are how your team performs, your retention rate, all these different things that are so important. And I really think that if companies want the leaves, if they want the big, beautiful, flourishing tree that sprouts year after year, you got to give the experiences so they learn to be a good manager, and give space and grace that they're not always going to be great at the beginning, and they're going to learn and have two-way feedback and talk about development plans, like do all those core things, and allow them to build their roots. And it is okay if an organization says, we're not the best at building those roots. There's so many resources out there, like On Deck, shameless plug, that can come in and say, hey, we can take that for you. Like we can be the person who teaches the roots. But companies have to be willing to allow the time. Like space and grace is a really big part of building good leaders. Like you have to give people the space to try things and it not work.
Man, what you're saying, it reminds me of the first time I became a second line leader and I was managing managers. The amount of like pressure that I felt from above I would kind of naturally, just not knowing, force it upon them. And something one of my mentors used to say is patience over pressure. Like, you have
Yeah.
to give people time to develop and grow, build those roots, build that trunk. That visual definitely is something that stands out to me as something that's powerful.
Yeah.
Um, Given that, like, a lot of employees seek organizations that support continued development, how
Hmm.
can companies ensure they're meeting this need at the frontline leadership level? Like, how do companies take that pressure and start building processes and systems that
Right.
invoke patience?
Yeah. Um, I think one good call out for anyone hiring is I think you will continue to see more and more candidates ask the question, how do you invest in your people? I think we're going to like I don't think that trend's going to go away. It's becoming an increasingly more common interview question, and a lot of companies their answer is one-fold. Oh, we have on demand learning, or oh, we invest in this platform. But really, learning is a triangle. You have to, I have so many analogies. I should write them all down. Learning is a triangle. So you have to, not everyone learns the same way. You need to provide learning in different avenues. And so when I think of the triangle, I think you have a combination of on-demand learning, your self-serve learning, which absolutely serves its purpose. Then you have those live peer-led or peer group learning. So those are your certifications, your one-off courses, your lunch and learns, like all these different types of different learning. And then you have one-on-one coaching. And that's where like the two-way feedback, whether that be with your manager or with a mentor or with a coach, that's where you're really digging into like kind of the psychology of why you are who you are as a leader. And again, back to that authentic self, like how can I handle situations differently moving forward, to be a better leader? And what's weird is that coaching one, from a company investment standpoint, the coaching one tends to happen at the VP level or higher. And I don't know about you when you became a VP, but when I became a VP, I was pretty much who I was.
Right.
And it was, like the chance to actually like help groom me into the leader that companies wanted me to be, like that was kind of a little too late. It turned into more situational coaching than it was necessarily like how to learn the best practices as a leader.
Yeah, like executive level coaching is so different. In what you describe in that triangle, to me, is what we call like a coaching system. That's
Mm-hmm.
definitely it. Like, anyone that interviews at other places, like folks that I've mentored or that used to work with me, like, what are good questions I should ask? Like, yeah, you should ask, like, how, like, exactly what you just said, like, how are you investing in your people? Or
Yeah.
can you tell me about the coaching systems you have in place? Because when companies have that and can speak to that, like, that's the proof is in the pudding, the show me, not tell me, like, oh, shoot, they have this very thought out running weekly ones, and deal reviews are separated. And then maybe there's some professional development outside of my number as a salesperson. So I love that you're kind of echoing that and seeing that. Throwing a curveball, because it's what I'm thinking about. Like, why do companies not do that though? Like,
Yeah.
why do people not understand that value of, like, hey, if you coach your people, not only are they going to be happy and stick around longer, but especially sales organizations, you're going to see some numbers go up and to the right. Like, why do people not see
Yeah.
that in your opinion?
I think I think there's a lot of reasons. Sometimes it is budget. Sometimes it's learning and development budgets are only this big. Think about how many layoffs people have happened. Like I'm sure that budget fluctuates based off companies and how it's performing. So there's that one piece of it. The other piece of it is depending on the size of the organization, the CEO or the C-suite, your key decision makers, that your CFO that may need to sign off in the investment, likely isn't feeling the pain point of that frontline leader. And so it doesn't feel personal. It depending on how tenured they are, it probably is really hard for them to remember what that felt like. And how many times I mean, how many times instances have you heard your frontline leaders pass on feedback up, and up, and it not be like almost rationalized in different ways? And so I think for us who are in the C-suite or at the executive level, if you ask for that feedback, let them challenge you and take it seriously. If they're saying, actually, I'm spending like 20 hours a week doing X, Y, and Z because I either don't know how to do it or I don't have the right tools in my tool belt, take the time to actually problem solve with that with them and like really feel that pain point. Because I think the farther away we get from those frontline leaders, the easier it is to say, well, we have bigger organizational problems. But if you fix that problem, how much faster can you close deals, or how much faster can they coach and develop their teams so they start performing at a different rate? Like, there is more ROI to that level and investing in that level than I think at times.
Yeah, what you said definitely stuck out around like not feeling the pain. Like I think one thing great leaders do, egoless leaders is what I call them, where they're comfortable like being vulnerable, they're comfortable taking feedback from the front line and like actually processing it and understanding that this could be an actual problem. I think one of the really bad, one of the negative things that happens in sales, and it's probably from the old guard, is like anytime you bring up a problem, it's considered an excuse. And if you're giving excuses, you're not running to, you're just finding an excuse to not hit your number. Like, and it's really hard for reps and managers to communicate an actual like problem or bottleneck up the chain because of the pressure that's coming back down, because they don't want to be perceived as negative or someone with excuses. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely get that. And leaders that can create a safe space for people to service that up, it's just a healthier organization.
Yeah. And a leader isn't going to be able to say, well, let me just go buy all these tools for you. Like, that's not like throwing tools isn't always the problem, but sometimes it's breaking it down to like, sometimes you have to ask a lot of why questions to actually get to the core problem and help them solve it. Or say, you know what? I know this sucks. Like, this sucks. That's a lot to do. I don't think we can solve that today. Is there something else that we could take off your plate that would like free up some of the time so you feel a little more balanced? Or like, be creative. There's a lot of different ways to support people. I also think, I don't know if you remember the TV show where like Undercover Boss, where bosses used to go like work in the McDonald's or go do what their frontline was doing. And you would see ones where they would like literally almost have a breakdown because they're like, oh, this is awful. Or this is the environment I'm doing. Like, as a leader, especially sales and RevOps leaders and CROs, go run a deal. I promise you, if your sellers are saying, I'm getting stuck at X, Y, and Z step, and that's why you're seeing my conversion rate be not as great as it was a quarter ago, or, time kills all deals, whatever it is that people are writing off as an excuse, go run a deal from end to end, a real one with a customer. You're going to think about it differently because you're going to understand the pain. And so like, I think sometimes it's just easy to write it off, like you said, and maybe it's time for us as senior leaders to slow down.
I love that. And that Undercover Boss is probably up there, one of my favorite shows of all time. When I was like a kid, I remember working at Annie Ann's Pretzels, and I thought we had this random new manager that was in from out of town, and I thought I was on Undercover Boss, but
oh yeah.
I do like that. I hear a lot, like one thing we do over here at Ambition, we call it your second first day, right? So anytime you get promoted or move into a different role, we celebrate it as it's your like first day of work. And like when you have your second first day, like you onboard again, right? So you go through an onboarding program the same way as if it was your first day in that role, because I think one thing that you said there that really stands out is we need to slow down, right? And like when we slow down and like just take smaller steps, your perspective changes because you're able to be involved in a deal and maybe see an issue that reps are having.
Yeah,
Um,
I want to use one more example because I think you'll love
yeah,
this one. So when I worked at Starbucks corporate at Christmas time, they needed extra help in retail stores because who doesn't want a cute little red cup? And so people at corporate all over the world would go work in a store. And you think about it, like, yes, that solves a staffing problem and it helps customers come through, which leads to revenue. Absolutely. But what does it also do? You remember what it was like to be a partner in a store. And
yeah.
that will, like, it did. People would come back and they would think about the front line. They would think about the end person who is having to go make a frappuccino with 12 steps in it. Like it's just a completely, it does change people's perspective by just slowing down for a second and experiencing a day in life.
I think it's on the other side of the coin too. It's a morale booster for the teams that those executives are overseeing.
Yeah.
Often, in large organizations like a Starbucks, like often this, famous figure that you've never actually met. Like imagine being a barista in a store and like your VP of the regions working alongside of you. Like
Yeah,
I can work. I want to work for someone that understands my day to day. So that's
absolutely.
got to have a big morale boost for the team as well. Um, I know we're running low on time. I think one of the one of these questions that I had kind of queued up that I want to make sure we touch on because I think I want to make sure we give the folks listening some hard takeaways to go look at. Obviously, through your experience, you've come across tools, investments, and strategies, to say the least. What are some of the most effective kind of tools or strategies that can help frontline leaders grow? Like, what are
Yeah.
some of the things you would maybe point a first time manager towards if they're looking to kind of develop?
Um, Find a mentor, and it doesn't have to be someone who you pay for. Like it doesn't have to be a paid person. There are people who like are on the same career path as you, but maybe a couple steps through or whatever it is. Like go find someone and sometimes it's helpful for it to be someone outside of your organization who you could go and bounce ideas off of or go get feedback from or say, hey, I did this and it didn't go well. And how could I do this differently next time? Because there will be a next time. Then as you grow, go mentor somewhere else. Go mentor someone and give back. I think that's so important. I mentor probably 6 people right now because I had a handful of mentors growing up and that's how I got to be where I am today. So I think that's one, and that's like very low cost, high impact, high value. Um, I think 2 is absolutely read books around leadership, but know that that book is written by one person's perspective and it's not gospel. And so take what you like and leave the rest. Take all the tips of things that you like and build your path as a leader. And then I would say from a company perspective, ask. Like there's no harm in saying there's this course or there's this tool. Tools can be hard if you need a lot of seats, but like there's a course, there's a tool, there's whatever it is. And I'm really trying to strengthen this area. And so I'd like to ask for some investment in my development and ask. And if you come up against organizations that always say no, that may be an indicator, but you are very focused on growing. That might be an indicator that like long term, that might not be the best fit.
Yeah, I think like the mentor thing, definitely like organizations say you don't have money to invest in tools or a learning program or
Yeah.
someone to come and train. You can set up a mentor mentee program for free and
Yeah.
it's not going to cost you a thing.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe to round us out, can you share maybe a story about the tangible positive impact you've seen when an organization does make an investment, whether it was bringing you on to walk them through on deck leadership, or maybe a time that you did buy a software or you did, create some new coaching program? Like, can you tell a story about the positive results that happen
Yeah.
once you do invest in frontline leadership?
Yeah. like you mentioned, putting together something that was a little like grassroots and free. I worked for a company that was really like kind of prepping to go through hyper growth. And so they were seeing more and more new leaders be promoted. And I put together I think we met monthly, maybe every other week, but we met as a peer group and they went through a cohort. And sometimes I'd send an article. They were very topic specific. Sometimes I would bring in someone either outside or inside the organization who is really skilled in that area. So example would be like handling tough conversations with people or collaborating cross-functionally. And we'd sit there and we would learn as a group. And then they would take that back to their managers and talk about how they want to continue to grow in those areas. Or if they felt really weak, we would get them additional support. So it was something very ad hoc, nothing. I mean, it wasn't super structured. It kind of was the building block to where On Deck is today. But it was so impactful. And like you would watch very quiet new leaders start to just bloom. And they would come with ideas, or they'd say, you know what, I just experienced this last week and it was so difficult, but I tried X, Y, and Z and it helped. Or I wish I had done this. And just watching them learn from each other is so impactful. And it was a very successful and free investment. It was only our time.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing too when you see it, and you know it instantly when you see that leader develop into their new, more confident form. Meg, this has been awesome. Too many gems here to call out, but a lot of good stuff. If people want to get a hold of you and learn more about On Deck Leadership, how do they do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great, or my website is odlc.info, On Deck Leadership Consulting. Google me. You can find out more there. But so excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks again, Meg. Appreciate you so much. Bye now.